associate professor in international development studies at Dalhousie, and he's currently a visiting fellow at the Center for Global Studies at the University of Victoria. And as I said earlier, he is in London from this department, so he completed this PhD thesis in 2008 at the American Celebration of right? Okay, good. And he's so we're switching places now. I'm going to North Korea, and Bob is going to talk to us about pursuing scholarship, activism, and advocacy on human rights and security in North Korea.
Yes, thank you very much. We are going to North Korea, not literally, but figuratively. Just get my display set up here. So no bears on this one. That's fantastic. What a tale. Absolutely incredible. No bears, but we do have nuclear weapons. So it's still a good element of risk here. So that's right. I graduated from the PhD program here at San Fraser in 2008. And it was just Valerie and I just missing each other on the way in. I was trained here as a health geographer, international health geographer. And my thesis was about chasing human doctors around the world. And boy, oh boy, did they ever go to places that are hard to get to. And that research still continues, to be honest. I was in the country of Kiribati, which is 2.5 hours flight northeast of Fiji, still looking at human cooperation projects that are truly global, so we can chat about that. The thesis became a book, and that just a little bit afterwards. And then the other world that I dabble with is sort of innovations in higher education. So the book that Rebecca Thiessen and I put out in 2014 talks about kind of the ethical issues of experiential learning. So those are the two worlds coming together at Dalhousie. When nobody was looking, they said, we need a new course that's innovative. I said, how about we teach students activism? And we did, and we made all sorts of headlines over that. So those are my three worlds coming together. When teaching the activism course, one of the topics that sort of through student enthusiasm was looked at was human rights issues in North Korea. And wow, did we ever. And so where this story comes together is, again, a real change from the original research that I looked at, listening to what students were genuinely curious about, and just going after the research areas, even though I had very little experience in it. So, North Korea, it's a strange place. I don't know what that is. For a very long time, often the imagery that we were getting out of North Korea often involved this sort of stuff, right? The sort of images, the political commentary around it. We were looking at Kim Jong-un, the curiosity of this character, the strange company that he keeps, the stranger company that he keeps nowadays. Stories as well that right out of James Bond about how the fact that his brother, Kim Jong-nam, was assassinated in Kuala Lumpur by two actresses who were from Vietnam, to which they put VX nerve agent on his face. I had a discussion with, I guess we're filming it, but okay, it's out now. I had a discussion with diplomats who were involved in the transportation of his body. The original idea was to actually just put a little bit of nerve agent on him so he would actually die in flight, which would complicate the process of repatriation. However, they overdid it, and as a result, he died in Malaysia. Just around, was it 2018, was the last Winter Olympics, North Korea reached out to South Korea to say, can we come play? And there's a reason for that. We can get to it. They brought some 24 athletes, 200 security guards, and 200 cheerleaders who all kind of looked like all the games. So this is not just a bunch of quirky things coming together. This is very intentional. It's intentional in one sense to be very scary and very comical at the same time. It's a very interesting form of international relationships and control about the perception of the nation. But when the ISS goes over North Korea, this is not open water, there's a Pyongyang there, it's completely dark. Other images we could look at, as you see here, the glow here is this maritime traffic, fishing fleets all around, up here, almost nothing. A friend of mine who works in human rights issues in North Korea was on the train from China down to Pyongyang. It stalled at this train station for some 18 hours. When he was there, and this is technically an illegal photo. If he was caught with this photo, his equipment would be confiscated. He could be in very serious circumstances because he's taking pictures of people poverty. And so that is verboten inside North Korea. What was very interesting, is like what Greg said, when I took the photo, the train just didn't move for 18 hours, but when it came nighttime, because the whole country's blacked out, the only place where there are lights is on the portraits of the leaders themselves, in a way. So it is a very interesting place, as you see here, sort of going back again, there's the rural areas, but even in the capital at night, Pyongyang, you can still get a sense. Coupled with that, questions about military security, right? Nuclear proliferation, maritime security, and of course, human rights. This is what sort of took me into questions about North Korea initially. Again, coming from health geography and looking at Cuba, giving presentations on what Cuba was doing in the international context, how frequently people would say, well, if you study Cuba, what are your comments on North Korea? And I would say, well, nothing. Right? It's, if we're going to the Apple conference, we don't talk about oranges. Right? And I eventually got more into this to see how where Cuba was putting out very much a international policy of solidarity and improving that. North Korea's apparatus was very much systematically engineered to become oppressive. And part of this was getting to know people who left North Korea, which I would argue is one of the most difficult migration geographies anywhere on the planet. Because you can't go south in North Korea, you have to go north into China. Now there's an estimate of about 10,000 North Korean migrants, the majority of whom are women, are still in China. Right? Last year there were only 60 North Koreans that made their way to Bangkok or to Ulaanbaatar, the two unguarded South Korean embassies to which they can repatriate refugees back to it's a medical facility off of Incheon Island for rehabilitation. Now, how that journey goes is to basically travel underground through China. So this would be a similar distance of going from Vancouver to Florida, in the underground way, down to Kunming, where then handlers and shepherds will then get people into Bangkok either through the very risky route of Myanmar or through Laos and then into Thailand or through those who have more means and resources, posing as Chinese tourists coming into Vietnam, day trip to Cambodia, and then into Bangkok to do that. The problem is that all these countries in green have signed agreements with Pyongyang for repatriation. So any refugees leaving North Korea and they are caught along that way, they are returned to North Korea for discipline and execution punishment. Those who don't make that journey, which is the majority, because it costs quite a bit of money to pull that off, they remain in China. And most of them are women, and most of them now are indeed trafficked. This is a very serious issue to which UNHCR, other international bodies just aren't paying attention to. There's more research and attention to it 2-3 years ago, but then we got caught up again with the security issues and the Washington-Pyongyang diplomacy, and those conversations tend to go to the back. So what I want to do in the next 23 minutes is give you a dangerously brief history of North Korea. I'm going to talk about how I've done research on the Hermit Kingdom. Then I'm going to move to another field that I had no qualifications for my PhD, talking about sanctions, and how this ultimately accumulates with hitting Kim Jong-un right in the wallet. And you'll be excited because Vancouver actually gets involved in this in a little bit. So that's what I want to talk about, but actually early, the point is there's dangerous little understanding of North Korea even today. From the human geography point of view, we're used to our toolkit about going and doing research on the ground, interviews, deep archival history, whatever it is. None of that works with North Korea if you're going after human rights and security issues. So this brings me to explore some deeper questions about the kind of methods that we would want to engage in places where you literally can't go. And as you'll see by the end of this, there's absolutely no chance that I'll ever be allowed anywhere near North Korea, nor would I really want to go there. I hear the food's terrible. Okay. But in terms for those who are curious about methods that have been used for this, there were first-person interviews with North Korean defectors, just trudging through the UN Commission on North Korean Human Rights documents, written and visual defector testimony accounts. For those who know about criminal traffic, pouring into the International Maritime Organization, automatic identification organization Ray-tracked data, getting WikiLeaks Panama papers, and working with these groups over here. So for those who are just a quick refresher of what North Korea is all about, it really starts with, quote unquote, the birth of the sun. And that son, of course, is Kim Il-sung's son. And the birth of the sun is very much a children's story that's told in schools about how Kim Il-sung is still the eternal president of North Korea, and a godlike figure as a result. His official biographies, Kim Il-sung came from a long lineage of leaders, and official North Korean modern history focuses on his life and activities. He's credited with single-handedly defeating the Japanese at the end of the occupation of North Korea, and with rebuilding the nation after the Korean War. And over the course of his lifetime, he was granted many esteemed titles, such as the Sun, the Great Chairman, Heavenly Leader, and others. My personal favorite is Double Hero Gold Medal. These titles and awards are often self-given, and the practice would be repeated by his son, Kim Jong-il. Now, for the historians in the crowd, you see this sort of cult of personality that came out within North Korea, very much out of Stalin's playbook after World War II, where he advised others in Eastern Europe to do the same thing, create a cult of personality, make sure that you as a strong person stand between your population, weapons, and food. If they are going to eat and be safe, they have to show loyalty to you. That hangover from the Soviet Union from Stalin's era survived in North Korea because the North did indeed invade the South, almost taking over the entire peninsula in the 1950s, and of course the Korean War triggered from there. So when the other sort of strong leaders in Eastern Europe were beginning to fall, Kim Il-sung managed to hold on to power with that ideology because of this now geostrategic question in Korea. Again, peace is yet to still be formalized. It's just sort of a general armistice that goes on in the Korean Peninsula. After the war, of course, you see the cult of personality that formed in the north, but in many senses it formed in the south too, under the Park dictatorship there. And with it came all of the organization of space and those didactic landscapes of symbolism, oratory. Here in Pyongyang, usually 2 or 3 of these parades a year come out and show the strength of the nation. But under the Park regime in the 60s, they were doing very much the same thing. Right? That was very much in vogue at the time. Now, back to the question about Cuba and North Korea, where does it depart? You can't broad-stroke communism, it's just too complicated for that. And in fact, when you really look at the inner workings of the North Korean system, it represents more of a feudal system, which in Korean is called Songbong. Songbong is North Korea's caste system, which the regime denies and defectors explain out with very careful detail. But what you're looking at is a categorization of society, 4 broad categories, 53 subcategories that ultimately determine where you live, how much you eat, and if you're able to leave the country. Now, there's 6 ways. There's, of course, the divine category, which constitutes that percent of the country. That's the Kim family. And there's the loyal part of the North Korea, where 12%, most of those folks are in Pyongyang, and they receive things like chocolate and imported wine, and better mobile phones. The wavering class, constitutes about 38% of the country. That even includes most petty officers and sub-officers in the military. They're now, again, North Korea's 4th or 5th largest military in the world, and about half of the country is deemed as hostile. Meaning that there's an ideological concern with most of the population that live outside of Pyongyang country, 26 million people. So thereby, if you get an offense, the enforcement brigade comes up and they give you a charge for something like stealing a laptop, you will go to jail. Right? That's the way it goes. But if you speak out against the leader himself, then you are then put into a military form of discipline that actually looks at ideological reform. Right? And parts of this, the work camps, Amnesty International has done a really great job working with activists to show where these camps are, involve stories like this: 3 generations of punishment for political crimes. So, if Valerie says something mean about Kim Jong-un, she goes to Camp 15, her family goes to Camp 15, her children go to Camp 15, and if she doesn't have grandchildren yet, they'll come along eventually in Camp 15. So some 200,000 people who are in these detention facilities, many of whom are there for these sort of political crimes, of which about 5 to 6% are children. Right? And some who hadn't even been born by the time they were sentenced. So you have to show unmatched loyalty to the leader in order to get ahead, and they get the 53 subcategories. Just to paint a picture, there you have the elites, right? There's the divine, okay? And again, when Kim Il-sung died, you saw in 1992 the elite crowds that were out there for 3 days of crying and weeping. That was mandatory. Now, where does this sort of begin? It begins with something here called the Korean Youth Union. This is really worth looking into. It's really not designed to nurture or to inspire its members' friendship, camaraderie, or duty, but really about showing that children themselves are very much replaceable, non-individualistic. You follow the path, if not, you can be replaced very simply. Here they are at the summer camp, and there you go. This is going on from there. There's all sorts of, we can get into the details of some of the lessons that are learned with this. Now that was the system that Kim Il-sung set up. Kim Jong-il comes into it, very Napoleonic, and I like to call him the last Shakespearean golfer. Why do I call him that? Well, because when he sort of took the show over in the 1990s, it was a time when the North Korean economy absolutely collapsed. Many of the post-Soviet states faced that, of course, but in North Korea, about 1 million people died of absolute hunger, best guess. At a time when Kim Jong-il had a private collection of Bordeaux of some 10,000 bottles of Bordeaux. Right? Stories about dining on sashimi that was still alive, and so on and so forth. But had he not been born the son of Kim Il-sung, North Korea's great leader, and therefore son of God, Mr. Kim might have been a filmmaker. He had a long desire to produce films. He wrote a book on the art of cinema. He owned 20,000 films, of which his favorite titles were Friday the 13th and Godzilla. And to many, it's sort of an absurd plot. It was also improbable. He has dressed in his baby bros at starch suits, oversized sunglasses, platform shoes, blue font hair, all adding precious height and depth to his 5 feet 2 inches. For years, he was invisible, not seen to the world in the 1970s, and in the late 1960s, he first appeared on the scene. Stories about Kim Jong-il claim that he wrote more volumes of literature than Shakespeare. On his first book, golf, he had 18 holes in one, right? And carry on and so forth. The birth was foretold on Holy Mount Pictou by a double rainbow, the presence of a flock of swallows in the middle of winter, and so on and so forth. His actual birth was kind of dull and took place somewhere else in China. It's really nothing much of a story. But what Kim Jong-il brought to the game was this thing called juche, self-reliance, and really put the playbook in order to where those, even in times of hardship and hunger, very serious pestilence in North Korea at this time, even during that hardship, to deviate, to go against the party, resulted in these sorts of crimes that would be punished. So a woman here stealing fuel in a rural area was probably a wavering class. This is the only photo we have of the North Korean prison camp. The 2 women here are carrying basically a honey pot because human waste is considered to be a valuable commodity for use as fertilizer. Here's one of the camps. Amnesty has done a good job of showing what they are there. And many of the defectors who come from the camps that spent time in there, part of their therapy and soul is to do this art therapy to show what they've actually gone through. The characters are absolutely telling. Different stories. The pigeon position is where you're put in a stress position for a while until your joints let go. Stonings, self-deprecation, all sorts of accounts of abuse. And this is basically what I was very curious about working with students, is that we're hearing this, we're doing research on it, we're talking about the UN Commission report about it, seeing this, and then also making the point, while these cartoons exist in the West, we're more concerned with these. That seems to be where we are. So we began looking at doing some coursework on it, but also trying to get stories of people who have left. And that involved working with several North Korean defectors, some of them who were quite famous. Ken Chuang-Hwan, he was wrote The Aquarius of Pyongyang. He was in prison in DPR labor camp H9. Kemp Rowe, that's wild. He stole an M15 out of Pyongyang in the 60s and landed it in Seoul and then gave it to the US. And wound up getting a tenured professorship in Kansas, I think. I mean, it worked out. Worked with Mr. Ahn here, who was actually a guard at one of the political prison camps in North Korea. He and Jung Hwang-il toured together through Australia and Canada telling their story. This was the guard, this was the prison. Right? And we worked with his organization that helps to get information into North Korea. We had in Halifax, actually, I guess it would have been 2018. Yeah, we had in Halifax 2018. But I don't know, here we are at the CBC doing an interview there. That's the translator Henry. Very interesting. When we did this interview at the CBC, we gave a talk at Dalhousie, and phone rings. Have you ever got a thing on your phone? Does it have a home phone or it's a mobile? And it was just, it's not like no caller ID, it's classified. Did you ever get one of those? Okay, cool. If it ever happens to you, who might be calling is here. And there's Mr. Jung on Friday, after he was in Halifax on Thursday. Trump got attentive to North Korea and decided to bring in some of the defectors. And Mr. Jung's commentary on his meeting with Trump is absolutely hilarious and illuminating. But this is one of the things we did. We worked with Mr. Jung's group. We also worked with Shin Dong-hyuk as the very famous North Korean defector who received the only North Korean defector actually received an honorary degree. And that was at Dalhousie. And about his story really inspired and captured students, the way that he approached activism, being born into a labor camp, witnessing the execution of his mother and his brother, being put into a prison, as he says, receiving abuse by guards during that time, and Mr. Shin going forward and showing the impacts of that abuse. And it was really a powerful time for the students and myself to sort of work together about sharing his story, but also develop research programs. It was so successful with the regime, as part of many other attributes of Mr. Shin's pain, put out a propaganda video that was going to be exactly happening, and it really broke him emotionally. It showed images of his father still in North Korea, but under duress, and that became a big thing. The regime basically charged up that there were inaccuracies in Shin's story, and then the pylon became, right? People started to discredit Shin, discredit me, discredit Dalhousie. We were up against it. And fortunately, this is why people keep your books from graduate school, is it just, I thought, what's going on here in terms of this defamation is about small details. So when Shin lost his finger in the book, he said he lost it because the guards took it from him after he dropped a sewing machine. Well, it turns out it was taken from him 2 years earlier on his first escape attempt out of North Korea, right? And then he was caught and returned. People, especially children who experience trauma, have a really difficult time reiterating specific details, especially when the method, right, is to sit down with a private sector journalist to do your biography in a hotel room over a 3-week period, just repeating. This is a classic problem that was the case with the Riga version Manchu testimony in the 1990s, the same idea. So I got back into it, started writing to the Globe and Mail and said, hey, lay off, right? Courts will allow evolving testimony. Chill. And that went. But in the meantime, dealing with North Korean defectors, Shin, partners with Shin, others, they said, if you're really interested in human rights, follow the money, right? And one interview I had in Seoul, just outside of Ituan Air Force Base, a fellow there said, it takes money to abuse human rights. Yeah, yes it does. He said, think about where your regime gets the money, and you might find that productive. So, the last gangster. Kim Jong-un, if you see photos of him, there's usually three types of photos of Kim Jong-un. It's either a lot of women crying around him because they're so happy, or him taking children to a hospital, or him looking at things, and that tends to be it, or him staring right into Western media saying, don't mess with me. Now that's usually the image, that's very calculated, but where Kim Jong-un was getting a lot of his resources, unlike his father, was through very new and creative means, including Bureau 121, which is just in Shenyang, China, 13th floor of this hotel. If you were the victim of a hack job, National Healthcare Service of Britain, Sony, others came out of that hotel. So the ransomware attacks, that was a lot of orchestration by North Korea. Kim Jong-un also buttressed his economy with other scams, such as counterfeiting cigarettes and $100 US bills, to the point, taking a chapter from his father, where they actually had to reissue the $100 bill to overcome the quality of North Korean counterfeits, reinsurance scams against Allianz, a German company, weapon sales, all throughout Africa, into the Middle East, Syria and Iran. You bet, North Korea is your broker for that. North Korea is the #1 producer of crystal meth in the world. Right, so you see where I'm going? Narcotic sales, trafficking the Australian pounded vessel loaded with heroin that was ultimately a North Korean vessel, sending their workers to Siberia to make furniture, shady exports of gold and pearl, casinos and cacao, and etc. Has anyone ever stayed at the city hostel in Berlin? If you did, then you stayed at a North Korean-owned hostel. And for those who are concerned with the health and well-being of rhinos, it was North Korean diplomats who were helping to facilitate and pursue the rhino trade during that time. Now, here's where the worlds come together in under 6 minutes. So, again, my use in Cuba, okay, was really, it's been there for a long time. And then at one point in 2014, this vessel that was North Korean comes into Cuba to pick up some sugar. There it is. And there's some troubles with this ship. So much so that the, what do they call it, the DEA notifies Panamanian authorities there's something wrong with this vessel. Panamanian authorities jump on, they say we gotta board this vessel. The captain comes out, guns a-blazing, there's a shootout, there's an attempted suicide, and sure enough, they go inside the hull and then oops, underneath the sugar, they find weapons housing for missile tests. So that didn't look too good for anyone. And since then, with this new economy that Kim Jong-un has been pursuing, is also been pursuing ballistic weapons programs. And the question is why? So it's encouraged the atomic scientists to move the clock closer and closer to midnight. But the thing with the rocket, just like I was saying how that balance between the sort of goofy humor and the dead fear of the place is calculated just as is the rocket. Why does North Korea put these rockets up every so often? Again, if you're trained geographers, you know you see the thing at night. There's not a rocket fuel refinery inside North Korea. It's got to be coming from somewhere. Right? Why put the investment resources into it? In many ways, you could talk more about how it's a symbolic device. You even see the missile represented in children's playgrounds and parks. It's a sense that even though it's a tough time in North Korea, the rocket is keeping us free and safe from US invasion. Now, follow the money. When that was said, a lot of the literature of international relations and political science was saying that North Korea was very dependent on trade from China. 16 functioning bridges, so 16 bridges between the two places, about 8 tend to function. You got it, okay, I'll get you there. And no one was into the seas. The oceans were kind of wide open. So that's where we started to look, was the oceans. This is a little picture of maritime traffic. A lot of stuff goes through it. I was very curious about this one harbor here in Nampo. And also, all this talk about sanctions against North Korea, they seem to still be able to acquire these resources and capital and trade and money laundering, all these sorts of things. Now, after some sanctions were put in place in 2016, you've got 24 vessels that were lined up outside of Nampo Harbor. So you're very curious about this. Some of my RAs at Dalhousie, we said, hey, let's start looking at this thing. We'll train ourselves on this IMO software. Let's start following vessels around and figure out where these financial transactions are coming So we started looking at the vessels. We found suspects like this, Chongmoon 68, Tanzanian flag, Chongmoon, not very Tanzanian name. Sure enough, it was managed in Hong Kong, owned in Hong Kong, owned and insured by a South Korean company. Now this is very slippery because there's the vessel itself actually in South Korea a bit later. You run the numbers through on the management companies, through the Panama Papers, and you find that indeed it's a shell firm where all these characters are tied to the ownership of that vessel. So it's a vessel that looks like it's from Tanzania, shipping cargo. It's a North Korean vessel that's owned by this series of crew, some fake names, some government agents, in order to get access in and out of the sea. The insurance company that ran the boat as well, fake. And then when you look at the international maritime traffic about North Korean vessels, or about any vessel really, you see the North Koreans play games. So here, this one, you're able to use the software to track movements of ships. There it says it's coming out of Wei Bang, and then here it says the destination is Barra. So that flag is for like Barra. Barra is the ferry terminal in Scotland. There's no way that little leaky boat is going to make it there. And we could go through dozens and dozens of ships like this. Sun Unity, again, the fake insurance company. We could go through all this, but this one I think will interest you, being mindful of time. There was one here that I actually was looking at called the Tianzhu, which was boldly and proudly carrying a North Korean flag, but insured by a Norwegian insurance firm. Released some data on that. The insurance firm said okay, and now we're going to have a statement on North Korean sanctions. That vessel essentially got caught, part thanks to this research. How do you get around that? You just change the flag to Kiribati and problem solved. And now it can be insured again. So this one I think you'll find interesting. This vessel here, anyone recognize where we are? Okay, good. It's totally legit. This is a completely legitimate ship. The boat Challenger, that's its identification number. It's managed by a German company, owned by a German company, insured North Korea. Totally legit, not North Korean at all. As you can see, it's leaving Vancouver, destination Sinpo, military harbor in North Korea, which Canadian law is pretty strict. You can't just be sending stuff from Vancouver over to. What we did is we tracked the history of it, and you see that the vessel is saying it's on its way to Pakistan, and we checked the data here to show the draft weight and the speeds and the location, and here on the 23rd of July 2016, it stopped outside of Sinpo and offloaded a lot of stuff. We don't know what it is yet. So I'm just going to wrap this up quickly to say that we're tracking these vessels. It was a real fun time. Sea Gemini was another one, actually coming out of South Korea. Said it was going to Russia into a port that it couldn't fit in. That was suspicious. And you see that it made this destination here. Say it was Indonesia in August 12, 2017. Something was in Argentina. And then it went for an hour and 44 minutes in Argentina. And then it goes back to South Korea 45 hours later, and then it says it goes to Russia. Just the perspective on that was, like that just doesn't happen. Like, no shipping company in the world is going to make money off of that. But essentially what this method did, and we kept tracking these vessels, and this one in particular here, found that it did go into Nampo Harbor. You can see here that it offloaded a bunch of stuff. 2 days later, that, right over Japan. So this is where it's coming from health geography, human rights, looking at maritime traffic, and where it's come full circle now is actually helping to inform governments in the Pacific who've been basically taken advantage of by North Korea by using the flags of convenience, by not monitoring reports. And still, with the students, we are happy to still be actively a part of funding programs to help North Koreans get out of North Korea and to be rehabilitated in the South, and also Mr. Kang and Mr. Jung and others sending USB keys into North Korea to provide information to help others to get out in the end. So, I'm mindful of time. I'm going to leave it there. If you want to have a chat later on, we can certainly do it. But hey, great feedback on this new campus and you're a great audience. So thank you.